Hi everyone, this is Supreet Kadkol, Assistant Professor, Department of Zoology, Sri Venkatramana Swami College, Bantwal. So in this session, we are mainly revising the previous year question papers of the paper Environmental Biology and Wildlife Biology, and this is mainly for final year outgoing students. So let's see the question paper. So these are the questions which were asked in the previous year 2018 and 19, the part B. So first question. So before that, this question paper will be divided into two sessions. So first session will be having part A and the part B is unit 1, and whereas in the second session we'll be having part B questions of unit 2, 3 and 4. So first question of part A, that was diapause. So it is nothing but the interruption which are mainly occurring during the development of animals. So what happens once the metabolic rate goes down in that organism, or once they want to undergo diapause, their automatically metabolic rate goes down. So these are mainly seen in insects, crustaceans, snails and many other group of animals. Next is Amensalism. It is a relationship between organisms of different species. So what happens where two different organisms are interacting, one is getting benefited and one is getting destroyed, or maybe one is getting unaffected. Usually in Amensalism that happens. So one is inhibited or destroyed, but whereas one is unaffected. So a large suckerfish, when it is attached to a small suckerfish, when it is attached to a large blue whale, so what happens? A blue is kept unaffected. Okay, you can drink my blood and you can go back. So that is how the Amensalism. Next, the soil profile. Very important question which may be asked for 5 marks and 7 marks also. So it is a the horizontal representation. So it is a vertical cross section of the soil which are made to layers. So each layer have got different types of soil content, like we are having different zone, A zone, B zone, C zone, O zone. So that type of zones are present, and what type of soil they consist of. So please see the schematic representation of the diagram also. Very important question. Next, biotic potential. So it is nothing but a maximum index of an animal. So what happens during the highest birth rate and mortal rate. So it is described as unrestricted growth of population resulting in maximum growth of the animal or in that population. Next, climax community. So we all know that ecological succession, at last comes the climax community. They are the larger and stronger organisms, but they cannot be destroyed easily. But these climax community organisms has to be destroyed, maybe by forest fire or human interference. Then only the next primary succession starts after the climax community animals or the ecological succession. Next, we are having the laws of thermodynamics, first law and second law. So as per the law of thermodynamics, that is first law, here the energy, what happens, cannot be created neither destroyed, but it transferred from one form to the another form. That is the first law. And coming to second law, what else? The entropy of the isolated system always increases. So entropy, you know that it mainly represents the unavailability of the system's energy for conservation to mechanical work or doing a type of work. Next, sedimentary cycle, a cycle which comprises the weathering of existing rock. So during the soil erosion or mainly the deposition or burials. So that time what happens, the weathering of rocks takes place mainly by physical method, chemical method or biological method also. So that is the sedimentary cycle. Example I have taken as nitrogen cycle. You can write the oxygen cycle, sulfur cycles. Next, biodegradable pollutants. So we know that there are two types of pollutants, biodegradable and non-biodegradable. Whereas non-biodegradable, they are very much what? They cannot be broken to simpler and they are harmful substances to nature, and also DDT, polythene bags, insecticides, mercuries, lead, these all comes in non-biodegradable pollutants. Next, wildlife corridor. So we have seen many different types of wildlife sanctuaries which comes near to each other. For example, when you take this Mokambika and Kudremukh, there is a small gap where this can be connected through a wildlife corridor so that animals migrate from one place to or one sanctuary to another sanctuary with this wildlife corridors. Fauna of Indian desert. So Indian desert example is Thar. You are having different fauna like animals, but mainly we can see red fox, then you are having chinkaras, black bugs, and there are reptiles and geckos also, and the wild ass, Indian wild ass. These are some of the examples which I have quoted. Next, subdivision in Oriental Releam. So Oriental Releam, when they have asked, you should know it mainly it consists of India and the lower part of the Asian subcontinent. So example is Indian, Indo-Ceylonese, then Indo-Chinese and Indo-Malayan. So these are the subdivisions which comes in Oriental Releam. Next, endangered species. So I already studied about the threatened species, which consist of different types of species, that is rare animals, endangered, extinct, vulnerable. So these endangered are nothing but these organisms are very much near to extinct. Example are tigers and hornbills. This mainly happens during like the human interference with the wildlife or poaching, hunting. So these are the questions of part A. Next we'll move on to part B of the unit 1. So in the unit 1, first question is predation. So predation is nothing but the biological interaction between killing and eating then another organism. Usually it is seen in carnivorous animals hunting on the herbivorous animals. Next, ecological spectrum. So spectrum is nothing but the classification of the animals depending on the eurobiont and stenobiont, or having the narrow spectrum inside them. Next, this is very important question, zonation of sea. So there are two different zones, that is pelagic zone and benthic zone, and further pelagic zone is subdivided into different zones depending on the range of depth and depth of light penetration. So epipelagic, mesopelagic, bathypelagic, then depending on the depth of light entering, photic, dysphotic, aphotic. So this is the representation of the depth. This is on light penetration. So please note the measurements, on what measurements what type of regions are changing. Next, mutualism. It is also a type of interaction between the organisms where both the organisms are benefited. For example, a cattle egret feeding insects on a cattle, where both the animals are getting affected, or I can tell not affected, the mutualistic behavior, getting benefits. Next, mangroves. So mangroves are nothing but a type of shrubby forest area which comes in the delta region or the estuary region. So where you can find maximum amount of the animal diversity and plant diversity because it contains saline brackish water. Next, temperature of as an abiotic factor. So temperature of abiotic factor, that is, it plays a very important role both in plants and animals. So temperature is very much required for a plant to undergo transpiration, to undergo guttation, and whereas in animals like insects, they undergo molting, they shed their skins, and reptiles even they go molting in the form of acidosis, they shed their scales to overcome this temperature. So the regulation of the temperature mainly takes the sunlight. So due to that, they also undergo diapause, hibernation, estivation,